My name is Pauline Joseph. I am the CEO of AC Marketing Caribbean. To say that I'm passionate about stories is an understatement because I think I'm passionate about people. Since I was a child, my dad told me to be so excited with preschool because it would finish early. I lived in Belmont on a corner street, and I would literally wait for students to come out from Belmont Junior Second and be like, hey, you, because I just wanted to be with people. So extroversion is my thing. And I actually channel that in my business. So being part Bajan, part Trini, definitely have a global mindset, but a Caribbean soul. And as the founder of AC Marketing Caribbean, I've worked with Microsoft, Republic Bank, Hilton, Barbados, Software One, Frontera, and most recently, based on my LinkedIn content, DHL. Right? And this is DHL Miami, by the way. Global, right? So I also host the LinkedIn local events Caribbean because I saw there was a need there for my brand, and I'm going to go into that in a bit, as well as the Live from the Caribbean podcast. Now, when it comes to what we're going to go through today, I know I have 20 minutes, so I might talk a little fast, but I mean, people are listening to voice notes on by 2, but I feel like you could do this. We could do this, right? Right? So before I get into it, who here does B2B business, which means business to business? Okay. And everybody else, B2C? Gosh, boy, I have to be like Lisa and tell you, you'll win something? What's going on? All right, you're warming up, you don't know me. All right, so let's get into this. When it comes to content, basically, every single slide I have here is about content, right? But ultimately, you have to change your mindset, and let's change it by going backwards. Meaning, when it comes to selling, this is a buyer's journey. If you're in any sales meeting, if you're in any conversation around sales, we have the awareness, interest, decision, action. This is a whole play on when it comes to actually reaching your customer, right? But guess what? Guess where all of this is happening? Online, right? So back in the day, I'd be like, oh gosh, I'm trying to get a new hairdresser. Let me talk to my, friend. Let me talk to my hockey colleague. I just moved to this place. You have a conversation. What's happening now is this, right? So this is actually from somebody on my Facebook newsfeed because funny enough, the timing of this was perfect because I was looking to change my internet provider. So when I saw this, I was like, wait a minute, because I wasn't sure if, and I know we are sponsored by a specific company, don't worry, I'm gonna get into that. But when it comes to what people are actually making decisions, you have to understand that all of these things are going on online. So we have to look at the awareness side of things, which is, hey, I have a need for something. That's happening online. I have interest in a particular brand. That's happening online. And you get the gist, right? The decision, and then eventually action is for them to take out a credit card, right? You with me? All right. So one thing I realized, and people fail to actually execute, that's okay, we're in a safe space, is we fail to realize where this is actually happening, just not being online, but we have to segment it beyond, a laptop, an iPad, like where exactly are we consuming this content? And this was taken from TAT, which is the Trinidad and Tobago Association for Telecommunications. And over the last, with this 5-year period, you've seen the increase of mobile subscriptions. There are more mobile phones than there are people in Trinidad and Tobago. So when you decide to create content and you want to put a Daniel Steele novel on your image, we are not looking at it. We are not reading it. We don't have time, right? Let's not talk about time because nobody have it, yeah? So if I am forced to if I'm looking at it and then I have to expand it, I know you're passionate about your brand. I know you're passionate about the business, but that doesn't mean I have to be passionate about it too. So statistics show you on average, like back in the day, 5 years ago, it was like 10 seconds. Now it's 7. I don't know what TikTok is going to do for the future, but we'll see how it goes, right? But this is basically showcasing when you're creating content, you have to remember how we are consuming this content. And I see it with the ads, because we do ads across the Caribbean with our clients, and 80%, on average, 80% is mobile phones. In between is a little laptop because people at work, might get an iPad in between, but always, always mobile phones, right? So if your customer is not in the Caribbean and you're looking at the US, spoiler alert, same thing, right? Over the last 10 years, smartphones, I remember back in the day, I don't know, anybody had a Nokia 6230? Yes, that fall in trees, and I just put that together and went back again. Can't do that now on my iPhone, right? So when it comes to how you're creating content, it don't matter if they're in Trinidad, Grenada, the US. Heck, guess how we get the news, right? Twitter. Yeah, so it's on the smartphones. Now, what is content? Because it's like, okay, Pauline, everybody using this word content marketing, digital marketing, what does that is? So that's literally these 4 elements for the purpose of this conversation. It is video, images, text, and audio. Now, Dr. Terry Carell spoke about, doing videos, and as an extrovert, people think that I love to be in front of videos. It's very intimidating. I worry about everything, but I also like to pay my bills. I like rent. I like to eat, So with the algorithm, I realized my business, in order for it to succeed, I need to go in this direction. But I'll show you that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do it, right? I'll show you some stats as to what I mean by that. Okay, so when it comes to creating content, I know it can become overwhelming. I know it feels as though, it's like, oh my God, I have to do this video challenges, which, by the way, I don't agree with. I don't agree with the 30-day challenges. I think it is not sustainable, because if you are an introvert and somebody tells you to create 30 videos for 30 days, even after that 30 days, you're going to be exhausted. I have an introverted sister. Apples and oranges. But what I've learned is there's certain elements that she's okay with, right? So you have to figure out what works best for you, and consistency is more important than the actual content that you choose, right? So when it comes to a small business owner like myself, limited resources, right? I remember back in the day, I was managing like 10 pages. Like, it's insane. Now, for one piece of content, 3 people actually create it. So when it comes to creating content for your business, you want to be able to create that content to build a community, which, I think you guys got that with the previous speaker. Ultimately, is about building a community. That's the bottom line. And as I mentioned earlier, I like people, so the extroversion comes easier to me. But it's also a financial decision, because it reduces output for you. Because the more people you have access to, guess what? Yeah? Less information, because Dr. Terry Carell said it. The fact that she didn't even have to say anything, and her entire brand just basically said, hey, this droves of people came, like Beyonce. Somebody said she could have flatulence and somebody like, oh, we need gas. Gas too high. Because she have a tribe, so it doesn't matter what she creates, right? So once you reduce your output, you create data unique to your customer, then you want to make the right decisions. And a real example is why I chose LinkedIn Local Caribbean is because LinkedIn is where the money resides in my business. As a B2B, I see, we get higher click rates for Facebook, but I've literally gotten a client from a LinkedIn comment. He went into my DMs. He's like, I'm looking for an SEO company. I was like, okay, what does that mean? What do you want? Right? And within 2 months, we had our first meeting. And I didn't meet them in person until 3 months later. They're in Bermuda. And that was literally from LinkedIn, right? So I was able to create that community from LinkedIn local events, be able to actually use that data to create more content. And then I had all these ideas. I'm like, we should do this and we should do that. And then we did a poll and we realized, okay, they really don't want international speakers. They want to know how to get land jobs internationally. They want to know they need support system as an entrepreneur. So there's these things that they want. I was like, okay, well, give them what they want. And that's one of the biggest gaps I see with companies in the Caribbean. We don't listen. I don't have a PhD for that, so let's move on, right? So how to create a strategy. The why is so important, but the how is even more important. So when we look at a content strategy approach, planning is so important. I know everybody's like, let's just create content. Let's keep going for the algorithm. But if you're not talking to your customer, who are you gonna talk to? Because I've seen people with 20,000 followers, and I can assure you, they're not making the revenue my business is making, right? So you have to be. I've actually had a company, a Fortune 500 company, reached out to me. They asked me to be an influencer. And she said she went into my followers to see who actually is in my audience. I was surprised because I was like, I don't have as many followers as a lot of people. They're like, but you have CEOs, you have marketing managers, you have people that we want to talk to. So at the end of the day, quantity is one thing, quality actually signs your checks, right? So you have to be able to make that plan to speak to that person. After you make that plan, you have to create. Because we all have to create that content, because remember where we're spending most of our time. Speaking of spending our time, when last you look at your phone screen time? You know how to do that in your settings?
Scary.
Exactly. So you're spending that time. Imagine how your customers spending that time. I'm embarrassed to say how much time I spend on my phone, but I want to blame my business, right? I just want to say it's my business. So after you create, you know what I feel? It's a huge deal, and I think Dr. Terry Carell mentioned it earlier. We poo-poo on influencers, right? We're like, oh God, all they do is but it's hard work, people. It's real hard work. I actually have a series interviewing them on YouTube, and I could tell you it's a job, right? And guess what? They have an audience that you need access to, right? But you have to make sure you're collaborating with the right audience, right? You want to make sure that it falls under your business. So collaboration, don't try to put aside some kind of individual opinion on influencers. You have to collaborate, because guess what? If Beyonce could collaborate with Sean Paul, who's you? Yeah? So let's talk about these examples of content. This wasn't planned, actually. Right? This is something I created long before I knew she was going to be on it. But this is an example of how you don't need to have high production value to get views, right? So I saw this individual at the time. I was just like, okay, she is using video. She's getting a lot of engagement. Let me reach out to her for my Life in the Caribbean podcast. And with my sponsors at the time, which was Regis, I was like, okay, I'm heading over to Jamaica. Let's record this, right? And this was at the pinnacle of, the lockdown. We were just figuring out what this whole Corona thing was, and just trying to figure it out. So at the end of the day, we're like, okay, I'm going to be there. Let's just record it. It was my phone. It was, I've literally seen celebrities record podcasts with their phones and use the audio, right? It was pretty simple. And this is what happened, right? One thing you must know, though, is Jamaicans will support Jamaicans. That is a very important factor that I've seen across every single ad campaign and strategy that we've done, right? That's important. At the same time, she obviously has a very strong brand, right? So collaboration for your business might mean, reaching out to a specific person and saying, hey, you have this audience that aligns with my brand. How can we work together? Because collaboration could mean so many things. They could create content that brings value to your customer, and then that actually brings that audience to your platform. So you have to figure out, back to the planning, what that means for your business. Now, I use image because it's important. I know video is pushed a lot, but image actually is very impactful for a lot of social media platforms. I use it to promote our triathlon club, and we were able to land Ironman Foundation sponsorship internationally just by images. So it does work, but you have to make sure that that image is being catered to. Remember what we're actually consuming this content on? There we go, we're listening. All right, so on the mobiles. So you need to be clear, you need to be concise, and funny enough, you actually still sometimes need to put or words on the images for the SEO purposes. You know, sometimes when you upload something, I don't know if anybody here manages social media, there's like a alt text, right? So you have to put stuff describing what's in the image. That all helps your SEO. That helps you go higher and higher on Google image, on Google search, because you know if you're not on the first page, you don't exist, right? So all those things are important, as well as description. An image without a description, it don't make sense. Unless you're Beyonce, that's a whole other story. I know I'm going back to her, but you know what I mean, right? So this is a clear, concise action, and it speaks to what I want the person reading it to do, right? When it comes to audio, I know it's a little tricky because it's getting very segmented. You know, everybody has a podcast, but I believe that if you find the right audience, I don't own a radio. When they had the thunderstorm and there was a press conference about how we're gonna keep connected, and the minister said, make sure your battery's charged. I was like, for what, my phone? I literally, my radio doesn't work on my car and I don't care, right? So I listen to a lot of podcasts. So who's to say there's not a discussion that you could have for your audience that is missing, right? So I want to get into a Q&A if anybody has any questions. But before I do, I just wanted to showcase some of the things that we do on YouTube, which is the YouTube series on Caribbean influencers. It's actually pretty interesting. One of these individuals actually just landed a Fenty Beauty contract. And I went to an influencer event in New York, and I met with a company called She Media. And their sole purpose is to find female influencers and connect them with brands. So don't let these people go and take our influencers before you get a little chance, okay? That's all I'm saying. They're out there. See how you can connect with them. Because what's happening is hashtags like Black Girl Magic, cosmetics conversation, these are global conversations. This is not a singular conversation. So find a way for you to connect with that influencer so you can leverage their audience. And this is a little bit of insight into my LinkedIn profile. It's a new feature that LinkedIn just signed up, which was before they never used to give you any data. Now it's like, Microsoft is like, I bought you, I need money. So in order for them to get money, they need to give me data so I could justify spending money on their platforms. So this is the last 90 days. And for those who want B2B, if you're not on LinkedIn, there are literally over 250,000 people from Trinidad on LinkedIn. And when I run ads, I'm actually running an ad right now. It's insanely successful. And it's a low quality image, but it's an image of a face. So faces are actually a huge deal for algorithms. And once you get people engaged in that content and people see somebody they know, it's just gonna keep going on and on that person's newsfeed. So when it comes to your LinkedIn profiles, definitely create content that is a reflection of you.